Almost 57 million working Americans lack access to a retirement savings plan through their employers. The rising number of elderly citizens finds themselves in dire housing situations. With the retirement crisis and increasing rents, millions of seniors are grappling with financial challenges. Increasingly, more baby boomers are coming to terms with the harsh reality that working throughout your adult life doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to afford housing in your senior years. This generation has weathered numerous recessions during their lifetime and has seen home prices soar over the past 5 decades. However, their incomes haven't kept pace with this growth. Many haven't had the opportunity to save enough for a comfortable retirement. According to a recent report by the Wall Street Journal, based on data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, in 2023, older adults represent the fastest-growing segment of the country's homeless population. Dennis Kane, a social policy professor at the University of Pennsylvania, emphasizes that the resurgence of elderly homelessness is something we haven't seen since the Great Depression. Experts are labeling this trend a silver tsunami, and they assert that this crisis has been brewing for years. Dr. Margot Kushel, a professor of medicine and the director of the Center for Vulnerable Populations and Benioff Homelessness and Housing Initiative at the University of California, San Francisco, has been closely monitoring the escalating rate of homelessness among older Americans since the start of this century. Kushel shared in an article for the American Society on Aging that in the early 90s, 11% of all homeless single adults were aged 50 and older. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and that percentage had surged to 37.7%. Presently, the over 50 demographic constitutes a staggering 50% of homeless single adults in the United States, highlighting the vulnerability of the baby boomer generation, those aged between 57 and 75. Kushel notes, it's an entirely different population. These are individuals who toiled throughout their lives, often in physically demanding jobs, yet never managed to save enough. Government data reveals that homelessness has skyrocketed by 11% across the U.S. in the past 12 months, far surpassing the previous annual record of just 2.7% in 2019. In other words, over the past year, an additional 100,000 people have found themselves living on the streets. The end of relief programs is exacerbating the situation, according to analysts. The COVID relief funds provided a crucial buffer. In an interview, Donald Whitehead Jr., the executive director at the National Coalition for the Homeless, highlighted, "We're witnessing the consequences when those vital resources become unavailable. This presents a problem of an unprecedented scale." Barbara DiPietro, the group's senior director of policy, shared with the Journal, "We're now observing older individuals in shelters, encampments, or even living in their cars at a rate we've never seen before." Historically, elderly homelessness has been a rarity within the broader homelessness issue. Cole Ha from the University of Pennsylvania noted, "We've always had very few people over 60 who've been homeless historically. However, over the last decade, conditions have undergone a dramatic shift. Between 2013 and 2023, the proportion of people aged 50 and older in homeless shelters has risen from 16% to 23%. The National Healthcare for the Homeless Council also reported that the percentage of baby boomer patients it served in 2022 was 36%, up from 25% 15 years prior. Simultaneously, the availability of affordable nursing homes and assisted living centers has dwindled, partly due to labor shortages, inflation, and reduced funding. In Florida, a state with the highest population of U.S. citizens aged 65 or older, over 600 nursing homes have closed since 2017. Thousands of facilities across the U.S. remain at risk of shutting down, resulting in a growing number of seniors placed on lengthy wait lists for low-cost housing and long-term care facilities funded by Medicaid. As demand surges, federal data reveals that there are only 25 affordable rental units available for every 100 extremely low-income renters. Consequently, many shelters are forced to take on the role of nursing homes, although the staff acknowledges they are ill-equipped for such tasks. Advocates, such as Steve Burr, raise questions like, if someone needs help with bathing, are there staff at the homeless shelter who are trained for such assistance? Joseph Duran, now 86 years old, had never envisioned retiring after a lifetime of work only to end up in a homeless shelter. It's not an ideal situation, he expressed. Facing medical issues and hospitalization, he depleted his savings and lost his home. More than ever before, America is grappling with a growing population of older adults who are experiencing homelessness, emphasized Jesse Wanis of Sparrow Community Care Society. The existence of places like this shelter has been a lifeline for those navigating incredibly treacherous waters. For the first time in their lives, they may have some relief, but every night we're at full capacity, and we must turn people away every day, he explained. Wanis stressed that this troubling trend won't reverse until concrete steps are taken to address the housing crisis. As long as we continue to neglect the housing crisis, we will keep witnessing older adults falling into homelessness, he noted. Simply housing seniors in shelters is not a sustainable solution, and I'm concerned that's part of what's happening. The journal highlighted that Americans born between 1956 and 1964, often referred to as trailing edge boomers, are bearing the brunt of this crisis. The latter half of the baby boomer generation entered the workforce amid the economic recessions of the mid-1970s and early 80s. In addition, they've experienced a loss of 98% of the dollar's purchasing power since 1971. The Great Recession of 2008 led to millions losing home equity, and as they reached retirement age, the overall financial well-being of this group became even more precarious in the aftermath of the pandemic. A study conducted by the University of California revealed that the majority of trailing-edge boomers experienced homelessness for the first time after crossing the age of 50. A series of economic setbacks over the years eroded their financial security, leaving them with inadequate savings to cope with the soaring housing costs. Between 2020 and 2023, rent prices have witnessed the most rapid increase in many areas, pushing them beyond the means of the average individual. Florida, in particular, has been hit hard by rising rent costs. Researchers reported that half of the 20 metropolitan areas with the steepest rent increases since the pandemic's onset are in Florida. During the health crisis, Judy Schroer, a resident of Florida, faced the sale of the apartment building where she lived to a new owner who raised the monthly rent by over $500. To compound her difficulties, Schroer lost a part-time job and had to rely solely on Social Security for her income. She shared that she had to couch surf for months before eventually securing a new place. At 71 years old, I never thought I'd find myself in this situation, lamented Shuttle. Regrettably, with each passing year, more seniors face the risk of encountering similar hardships. By 2040, the number of Americans aged 65 or older is projected to swell by 45%, increasing from today's 56 million to 81 million in just 2 decades. Meanwhile, the availability of affordable housing continues to dwindle, and the fact that an increasing number of workers are retiring with no savings signifies that a perfect storm is now unfolding. An analysis by the U.S. Government Accountability Office revealed that only 1 in 10 low-income workers aged 51 to 64 had any retirement savings last year, compared to 1 in 5 in 2007 before the Great Recession. These workers have median earnings of around $19,000 annually, as per the study, which examined data from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances and other sources. Moreover, only the top 10% of older workers by income have seen an increase in their retirement assets since 1992, while the remaining 90% have seen no significant growth. However, the issue may not solely lie in individuals' capacity to save for their future, but in the way the U.S. system is structured. The U.S. system hinges on Social Security and private pension plans like 400 and Onyx. Nonetheless, A significant number of low-wage workers lack access to employer-sponsored retirement plans, and pensions have become increasingly scarce in the private sector. According to the Labor Department, less than 15% of private sector employees have access to pensions. This leaves many Americans falling into the gap, primarily relying on Social Security, which only replaces around 40% of income for the average worker upon retirement, resulting in financial challenges for numerous seniors. Social Security benefits, while valuable, are struggling to keep pace with rising rents, leaving younger boomers at risk of falling into poverty. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, as of August, approximately 23% of Americans over the age of 65 were living in poverty. Data from the Social Security Administration reveals that the average Social Security benefit now stands at $1,176 per month, which is more than $300 below the nationwide median rent price of $2,052, currently at a record high. Jessica Leo, president of Council 220 of the American Federation of Government Employees, expressed her concerns, stating, "I want to respectfully emphasize that Social Security is confronting a genuine crisis. It's a crisis that is causing immense hardship for both workers and the millions of beneficiaries whom we have sworn to serve. This is an untenable situation that has been worsening over the years." On Tuesday, the newly released Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index shed light on the fact that this year, the United States is trailing behind 30 other countries within the 38-member bloc, where the average poverty rate stands at 13.1%. Analysts assessed the nation's retirement system with a grade of C+, placing the U.S. in a category alongside countries like Kazakhstan, Colombia, and Croatia. In contrast, the retirement systems in many other affluent developed nations, including the Netherlands, Iceland, Denmark, and Israel, greatly outshine the U.S., with all four earning A ratings. Our approach to retirement is deeply flawed to the point that about 2/3 of working Americans over the age of 50 express intentions to postpone retirement or are uncertain whether they'll be able to retire on schedule, according to an Axios Ipsos poll. While their savings dwindle, household debt has reached record levels. In the second quarter, total household debt hit an all-time high of $17.06 trillion, with credit card debt, in particular, surging by $45 billion to reach a record $1.03 trillion. The burden of debt is shattering the retirement dreams of countless seniors, with 70% surveyed admitting they don't believe they can afford to retire. Financial concerns are the primary factors preventing people from retiring, Axios reported in their study. These statistics are deeply concerning, as they reflect the stark reality that an overwhelming majority of Americans see little hope of ever achieving the financial security they rightly deserve. The unfortunate truth is that many of these individuals may not have the physical ability to continue working in their later years, despite their desire to do so. In a nation as prosperous as the United States, the prospect of homelessness for anyone, especially older adults, should be deemed unacceptable. Instead of facilitating a comfortable retirement for U.S. citizens, our leaders continue to offload this responsibility onto our shoulders, compelling workers to uphold this unequal economic system, even after a lifetime of honest, hard work. Once again, it appears that we're left to fend for ourselves. And if housing costs persist in outpacing income growth, older Americans may find themselves with no alternative but to work until their final days. Otherwise, the homelessness crisis is bound to worsen. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.